Thanks for joining us today for our 26th episode of the Restaurant Dealmaker Show, where we discuss pertinent topics regarding the food and beverage industry with industry professional. My father always used to mention to me the expression, the busiest people have the most time to do the most things. My guest host today is Steve Mayer, who certainly exemplifies this saying. I had the pleasure of meeting Steve in 2018 when we were both panelists at the Golden Gate Restaurant Association Industry Conference. Subsequently, I've worked with Steve on several projects doing various restaurant valuations where he was serving as interim CEO. And currently we are selling a restaurant, which is part of a chain that Steve is in charge of. Additionally, I chose, since my accountant of 20 some odd years retired, I was looking for another accountant, and I decided to hire Steve, and he was gracious enough to take me on as a client. So I've sort of gone full circle with him. Anyway, Steve is a CPA by trade. However, his entrepreneurial nature has led him to be involved in starting over 18 different businesses, including 2 accounting firms, a few restaurants, a bookstore chain, a catering business, real estate, and a number of nonprofit foundations. He is also the co-founder of Pacific Bank. His companies have been listed as the best place to work over 10 times. He served on over 20 nonprofit boards and always finds a way to give back. He's the author of 2 books with a third on the way, which he'll discuss shortly. Steve is also the founder and managing partner of SD Marin Associates, which is a full-service accounting, consulting, and wealth management firm headquartered in San Francisco, with additional offices in Menlo Park, San Mateo, and San Leandro. Prior to this, Steve was founder and managing partner of Burr Pilger Mayer, which was a full-service accounting, consulting, and wealth management firm, where Steve was CEO for 25 years. During this time, the firm grew under Steve from 5 employees to over 400 employees, with 6 offices throughout the Bay Area. Steve has been a consultant, a business advisor in the restaurant industry since 1980, and has been founder and owner of multiple restaurants, including Aqua, Scott's Seafood, Café de la Presse, and other restaurant operations. He's also advised over 10 to 15 restaurant groups over the years on acquisition, dissolution, expansion, financing systems, accounting, and tax services. So, as you can see, Steve has many expertise, and we really look forward to what he has to say here soon. Just as a mechanical item, if you have any questions during the show, please type them in the question bar, and we'll try to get back to you during the show. And if not, we'll get back to you shortly after the show. Okay, so with that being said, it's my pleasure to introduce Steve. And Steve, thank you for joining us today. The first question I have for you is that obviously through your career, you've achieved excellence in so much of what you've done in life. So what are the principles that have motivated you in life to achieve the many accomplishments you have completed?
Well, Steve, 2 Steves. So,
Yes.
We'll call you Zim.
Yeah, that's fine. That's cool. Yeah, I'm good
Uh,
with that. Yeah.
I mean, and thank you for your warm introduction. As you were saying all that, I said, "Oh my God, did I really do all that?" And obviously, nobody does everything by themselves. There's a million people working side by side or behind the scenes to make anything happen. And I've been fortunate in having just terrific people around me. So your question is, how do you achieve all this stuff? And I think it really has to do with the way that I was brought up. I I grew up in San Francisco. My kids are actually 5th generation San Francisco. We grew up in the Mission Terrace area of the city. And, we were just kind of a normal family living next to a whole bunch of other normal families. And my mom and dad are both gone now. My mom passed away just shortly a couple weeks ago, and my dad was 7 years ago. But they kind of instilled in their kids these core values. And neither of my parents were business people. My dad was a cop, and my mom was a housewife, and took care of the house and volunteered at the school. But I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to, you know, every day do the right thing. And if you do the right thing, things normally work out. They don't always work out, but for the most part, they do. The second thing I think that's really critical is you take care of your people. And in all the businesses that I've been involved in and the things that I've been in charge of, I can't think of once where I made a decision on how it affected me first. I just have never done that. Most of everything I think about is how does it affect our clients, our customers, or the people who work at the company. And if you have that kind of an attitude of you're taking care of your people, I think it makes a big difference. You mentioned that I've been involved with lots of nonprofits, and it's been a privilege to be involved with these nonprofits, giving back in the community. And I think that's the third leg of the stool, is that I believe in giving back. When I was a kid, my parents volunteered at school, every committee, blah blah blah, and I just kind of grew up with that as being just something that you did. And I think when you give back and you take care of people and you do the right thing, success comes to you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. My father instilled and my grandfather instilled those same kind of beliefs in the way I was raised. That you basically are you should need to be honest and forthright and do the right thing and give back. And both my grandfather and my father were very involved, and consequently, I've been involved in a number of nonprofit organizations to give back, and it's a wonderful feeling to be in that position. It feels so good, and lucky. It's just the way I've been raised, and I've tried to raise my kids that way. Yet to be seen if they will perpetuate that.
I'm
Hopefully,
sure they will.
hopefully they will. You only lead them to water, right? You can't make them drink it. But yeah, no, I'm on sync with you on that whole attitude, very, very much so. You've had a real zest for life. You've been a very active backpacker for 40 years. And when you were 60, you completed an Ironman race. And for those of you not familiar with the Ironman race, it consists of a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bicycle ride, and a 26.2-mile run in that order for 140.6 miles. Bear in mind, Steve did this when he was 60. So what motivates you to pursue and complete all these physical challenges?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, work is hard. It takes a lot of effort and time. And if you don't have some sort of physical activity to do, whether it is working in your garden or working on your car or whatever, whatever it is, I don't think you can get through the work week without being in shape. I am turning 70 in a few weeks, and I just did a half Ironman, which is half of all those distances.
Hmm.
And, it is a little crazy. My body's a little worn out after almost 70 backpack trips, but we plan it again every year. We've already got the trip planned for this year to Yosemite, and I'm taking my son. I used to start taking him when he was 9 with a few other dads and their kids, and now the kids are 30, and we're still going every year. And we've taken the whole family. And I'll tell you, backpacking in the outdoors is fantastic because you get away from your cell phones and your computers. The triathlons, they are really, really hard. I'm not a swimmer. I'm not a biker. I'm not a runner, but I'm sort of okay at all of them. And the physical effort of making it work, was really, really important. When I was turning 60, that's when I left my other company, and I knew I needed a distraction. So signing up and doing the Ironman was that distraction, and it let me focus on on getting the new business started and moving forward. And I hope to still be doing this stuff in another 10 or 15 years.
That's wonderful. How much training did it take you for that first Ironman that you did?
You know, probably not. It. I A little story on that. My nephew had done a couple Ironman. I phoned him up and said, "Hey, this thing is coming up in July, and it's April, and I really think I need to kick in. Do you think you can help me?" And he said, "Well, I can't, but I'll get you a coach." So he phoned me. I talked to this guy, and the guy said, "Well, when is this thing?" And I said, "It's in 4 months." And he said, "Well, how old are you?" And I said, "Well, almost 60." And he says, "You'll never make it." And he says, I think it's too late for me to help you." So that made me so upset. And I was so mad at the guy that the next morning I started training. And I trained 3-4 hours a day,
Wow.
most days. So I was getting up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning to make it work.
Wow.
And so it was it was a big effort. It's very, very hard on your family because, you're just, you're not, you're in the workout zone, not the family zone. But the family was incredibly supportive, and they were all there when I finished across the finish line. And my kids were actually doing the run with me at the end in the dark. so,
wow.
so it was okay.
Wow. What an experience. Wow. So, of all the various business activities, Steve, you've been involved in throughout your career, what have you enjoyed the most, and why?
I think that all of them have been fun, but I have to tell you, kind of building the two accounting firms, that that was a lot of fun. The BPM, Burpilger Mayer, I had great partners, Curtis and Henry. We worked together for 10 years at one of the big firms, and then we started the company, and we started it with 5 people, and we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, I was young, 30, but we started it with a foundation that said we wanted to be full service, we wanted to have a commitment to the community, and we wanted to have fun. And we did. 25 years later, we're 400 people, full service, very involved in a lot of things. And I was very happy and very pleased with everything we did in the community. And from the Chamber of Commerce to a number of nonprofits to the Bay Area Council to Glide Memorial Church, and you name it, we were involved with it. And when I left that firm rather suddenly, when I was just about 60, I was scratching my head. What was I going to do? And nobody had ever really built a second accounting firm. People had left firms and started small firms and had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. But I wanted to do it again, and I wanted to build it not bigger, but I wanted to correct everything that didn't go well with the first firm and make sure we took care of it in the second firm. And so we launched that firm, and we're now about 80 people. We have 4 offices. As you mentioned, we've been on the best places to work 10 times in a row. I mean, that's incredible. And it's not me voting; it's all of our employees voting. We've had growth. We hardly ever lose a client. People are happy with us. We're involved in the community. So these are great things to do. And one of the other things that makes it so enjoyable is you are mentoring young people. In accounting, a lot of the people join out of school, and it's their first job or second job. And so you have the ability to mentor them and guide them and show them sort of how to do things the right way for your clients, the community, et cetera, et cetera. So building those firms has been really, really, really terrific.
That's wonderful. Wow, there aren't too many people that certainly have accomplished that. You've written 2 books which give advice on business and life, and you're completing a 3rd book on advising young people on personal finance. Can you please tell us about your motivations for writing these books and something more in detail about these books?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see this. I'll hold this one up. But this is a book called, I call it The Toughest Guy I Ever Knew, and Other Short Stories. And my dad died 7 years ago, and almost today, two more days. And he was just kind of a normal guy, but he was respected by everybody. And when he passed away in April, by the time I got to Father's Day, I wanted to take all these short stories that I had been writing over the years on all my little business experiences told through something. So there's stories told through playing baseball, through backpacking, through my car, through coaching Little League, all these different things. And I put them all together in a book. And the first book was really to honor my dad's legacy. And his is the main story in the book. And it talks about him growing up in San Francisco and his police career and him being a great father and everything else. And one of the themes is my parents were married for 68 years.
Wow.
They held hands for 68 years. They met when they were 16.
Wow.
Got married when they were 19, and so that was a big influence. And every one of those stories tells a story and has a tidbit about business interwoven into the story. And then the other two books, we actually have three of them written now. Are on financial planning, and one is aimed at adults, called Five Buckets, Four Shovels, a Beach, and a Map. It's a long name. And the other one is called Adulting 101, and it's aimed to high school and college kids. And after we wrote the first book on financial planning, and the idea is to link kind of a full service approach of investments, insurance, estate planning, taxes, all kind of together under one kind of quarterback. And then the one for the kids is to kind of teach them financial literacy. And we have formed a foundation, and we've been teaching kids, and we probably taught about 3,000 of them over the last couple of years. And it's very worthwhile. So the books that were written, the impetus was to honor my father, but it was also to pull together something that was a great tool to teach kids financial literacy, and then for adults to give them a guide to kind of how to tie all their personal finances together.
Yeah, that's terrific. With your influence with your alma mater, Reardon High School, and your involvement there, have you been able to encourage them to maybe add a course where they teach financial planning, so to speak, and basic finances to students there?
Yeah, there actually is a course. A couple years ago, I actually taught a course for 18 weeks, and it was it was kind of interesting. It was you kind of start the week one out, and you're just graduating high school, and then you get a job, and then week three or so, you decide to leave that job and start your own company. And we figured out what kind of company to start.
Wow.
In the next 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, you're starting the company and growing it. And about week number 8, you get married, and then you begin to have a family. And so then all of the things that were in the financial planning book comes in. You had to buy a house, you had to get insurance, you had to do an estate plan, and then you have a couple kids, and then you put the kids through school, and then you get to week 15, and now you're theoretically like 60, and now you're positioning the company to sell it. And so then you go through the process of selling a company. So at Reardon High School, over 18 weeks, we did sort of this whole life thing of starting a company and selling it and having a retirement. We've also taught the financial literacy there many times, and they're all into it, and it's being very well supported at Reardon, and we've taught at many of the high schools around the Bay Area, and it's a really good program.
Yeah, that is so needed, teaching students the basics of, accounting and finance and how to run their business affairs. Because typically they don't have a clue when they get out of the high school,
Yeah.
and sometimes in college, they don't know how to handle their finances. So I think that's a real gift to the community, being involved in that pursuit. So I commend you on that.
Well, thank
Um,
you.
our involvement together started in the restaurant industry as a result of the Golden Gate Restaurant panel we were on in 2018, and subsequently I've done a couple of projects with you, a couple different restaurant valuations, North Beach Restaurant, and others, and it's been very nice to be involved with someone of your caliber. And you've also been involved in ownership of restaurants and, in various facets of restaurant development, et cetera. So could you describe your past and current positions and what they encompassed, and, and how that, plays into your total package, so to speak, of expertise?
Yeah, I got involved. It was probably 1980 or so, and the a whole bunch of the French bread companies in San Francisco were doing a buyout of some, and then they were combining into one group of companies, and the partner I worked for was helping to structure the whole deal, and I was asked to run all the projections for all combining all these companies and cash flows and all that kind of stuff. And we did that, and I met some people, and then the next thing I knew, I was being hired as a consultant to work with a few people to buy a restaurant on California Street called Seven Hills, which was, I think we did that in probably 1980, I think. And the and that didn't go all that well. It was it wasn't a great play. It was a great location, but it wasn't the food wasn't the greatest, and we were losing money. And you kind of start these things, you never think you're going to lose money, but many of them do. And then one of my clients came to me, Charles Condi, and he said, Steve, your restaurant is terrible. And I said, well, thank you, but you have a great location. Why don't we close it and do something spectacular? And that's where we built and conceived and developed Aqua restaurant on California Street. And Aqua, we started with George Marone was the founding chef. His wife Stacy was the general manager. I still see them now. Michael Mina was the pastry chef, and when George left, we made Michael Mina the executive chef, and then he kind of launched his career from there. So when I see him, I always kind of reminded him that I helped him get started, and
Sure.
the and he thanks me, and he tells me his wife always liked me.
So
So
for those in the audience that don't know Michael Mina, give us sort of a brief overview of Michael Mina's success today.
oh, well, yeah, I think he has like 100 restaurants. He's very, very successful, all kinds of concepts, opened in several of them in Las Vegas, many of them around the Bay Area. And he's always done it with kind of taking the high road. He's well liked, well respected, a hardworking kid. And again, I met him when he was just a young knucklehead. And in fact, I had a Giants opener party where I invited 300-400 people, and I asked him to come and boil the hot dogs for me. So I also tell him that he used to cook hot dogs for me in the park.
Oh, that's cute.
And
That's
so
cute.
that's kind of how that's how that first thing started. And then Aqua expanded. We went to Las Vegas. We went to Laguna Niguel, and then we started doing a few other concepts. And then somewhere in between, I met the guys that founded Scott's Seafood and worked with them. And then they kind of split up, and then I became a co-owner, and I ended up with a few Scotts. And then I had a client that owned the Cafe de la Presse, and Charles Condi said, hey, we ought to do a French bistro. So we bought him out and developed that. And that's at the corner of Grant and Bush in San Francisco. And it's been it's a mainstay. It's tough with downtown San Francisco now, but we're still hanging in there. And, so one thing kind of added to the next, and then I worked with Michael Tusk on their company, Quince, and they were a client for a number of years. And then just so over the years, you end up having a lot of these that you become involved in. And I'm not a cook. I'm not a restaurant design guy. I'm kind of the numbers guy. And what I find out is that if you don't close your books and you don't know where your numbers are in the restaurant business, you're probably not going to make it. If you close your books, it doesn't mean that you're going to make it, but you probably have a much better chance of doing it. So I've always advocated strong finance, strong accounting controls, strong purchasing, strong systems, HR, insurance, point of sale systems, all that type of stuff. Because if you can feed the management team the right information at the right time, they're probably going to be more successful.
Yeah, very well said. So what aspects of your restaurant experience have been most challenging, and what experiences have been most gratifying for you?
Well, I think the most challenging is that you decide that you're going to open either a new concept, or you get hired to help somebody do that, or you're going to expand one of your existing ones. We did that with Scott's, and you're 1,000% positive it's going to work. There's no doubt about it. And my wife used to just go crazy because she said, "How can you be so optimistic? It's the toughest business in the world, and you just pretend like it's opening the refrigerator." And I think that the challenging thing is that when you plan something and it takes a long time and you go through all the permits and all the hassles and everything, and then you get it open and it's not an immediate success, and you just cringe because it's supposed to work. It's supposed to work every time, and it doesn't, and it's frustrating. And then you have to tweak it, and then you're trying to figure out, okay, do I change the menu? What do I do? How do I get food costs right? I got too many people. I got to let people go. That was never. That is just very, very frustrating. But when you get a winner, you think you're the smartest person in the world. Aqua was tremendous success, absolutely tremendous success, and it changed the world. Scott's was a tremendous success for when the original guys opened on Lombard, and I got involved right after that, and then they expanded and expanded, and they were still doing really well until they had a CFO who was a bad guy, and he embezzled about $1 million from them, and
Wow.
never really, really recovered. It was terrible.
Wow.
And so when Cafe de la Presse in San Francisco, when we opened that, we had Laurent Marique was the executive chef, and Laurent's been my partner there, and he's a Michelin star guy, and that was a tremendous success. And we and so it's funny when they are successful, it's like you think you're a genius. And when they're not, it's like, you blame somebody else. So it's the high and the low in the business. People
Oh,
say when you buy a boat, it's the second happiest day, and when you sell the boat, it's the happiest day.
yeah, for sure.
In some of these restaurants, it's the same thing. You go from high and low all the time, and you have to hang in there, and you have to have financial resources to back the bad times to make it work.
Yeah. And if you look at the industry as a whole, it's just amazing the number of superstars that were, out there for so long, and then they had a reversal, and then they were past history, and you just see this
Yes.
all the
Yeah.
time, and it must be extremely demoralizing to them, in terms of been on the top of the charts, and then all of a sudden fall off the charts. And And I see this all the time, and it's just must be a very frustrating experience for them. Um,
Yeah, just to add to that, and I don't want to mention any names, but
yeah.
I've been involved with three or four of these high-end things that were around San Francisco and had
Yes,
many units, and now they don't have anything.
exactly.
Part of it is they get ahead of their skis, they try to expand too much, they lose control, or what happens is the owners stop being active in the actual running of the restaurant and the
Yes,
cooking of the food and serving the customers,
right.
and they end up kind of being in a back office someplace,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't work.
No.
It's a people business, and
Yes.
whether the people are the workers or the customers or the vendors, it's still a people business.
Yes.
And Malcolm Stroud from Scott's, I mean, he was a genius at this. He could talk to anybody about anything, and
Right.
he was always there, and that's, I think, why they were successful. And once you sort of start the corporate model, I think it's the kiss of death, unless you were a huge chain.
Yes.
Then you need the corporate model.
Yeah. But there are very few corporate models that have worked well on a multiple, big chain basis because it's too complex. I mean, most of the big chains have a much more simplified format. It's just more advantageous for, multiple expansion. These fancy high-end restaurants, very few I know of that have been successful as a chain. I mean, there are a couple around, but very few. And
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
because the personalized approach is so much more, needed in that kind of a format, versus a Chick-fil-A or, any kind of a chain simplified menu approach. But so you did a great job, basically, stating the challenges of the restaurant business, but just shifting to your overall business career, which has been very diverse. What have been the most challenging experiences that you've encountered, and how have you dealt with those challenges?
Well, I think the biggest challenge I ever had was after running my first accounting firm, that I co-founded for 25 years. We sort of had a difference of opinion on how to run it,
Hmm.
and uh, and I was the CEO of a major accounting firm on Monday, and then Tuesday, we sort of had a board fight, and I find myself, in an awkward position that stayed that way for about 9 months.
Hmm.
So I finally decided to leave.
Hmm.
And the day I decided to leave was the day that I pushed the button to do the Ironman, because I
Ah.
knew I needed a distraction. And then I left. And when I left, I remember uh, my uh, longtime admin assistant, Gail Jenkin, who was with me for 31 years at both firms. And I went to Gail and I said, Gail, I'm leaving, and and I want to start another firm, and I want you to come with me, but I don't know if I can do it again. I'm almost 60, and it's it's really hard, and I don't know if I can make this work, and it may fail. And she looked at me and she said, well, don't. And I said, you mean don't start the firm? And she said, no, don't fail. and
That's great.
with and with
Yeah.
that, we we launched SDM. And on that day, we had no clients, no employees, no office, no website, no business card, no nothing. And within 2 weeks, we rented some space at the Chamber of Commerce. I ended up having a few people join me. I was able to take a few clients with me, and we launched the company. And I didn't get paid for 5 years as we built the company, but it was all about building the company.
Wow.
And it was, and but it was fantastic. And she was there, my family was there at all times, and we pulled it together, and now we have a very successful company. And so I'm very, very fortunate. It was, people say at times you have, the best of times, the worst of times. And I remember my father saying to me, it's not how far you fall, it's how far you get up after you fall. And those were some very, very, very dark days, but you kind of did it with an optimistic attitude, and you made it work. And
Wow.
I kind of have the attitude, Steve, that I'm not going to fail. That's non-negotiable. It is not in my vocabulary, and it drives some of my family crazy because I think I am overly optimistic at times, to a fault, and sometimes to a big fault. But if you don't, if you shoot for the stars and you hit the moon, that's not so bad, right?
Yeah. Well,
And so
that, that kind of attitude has certainly served you well, and the proof's in the pudding, and the success that you are, and the overall commitment you've made to everything you've done. I mean, it's just remarkable. So in going discussing this a little bit further, like, what are your strongest areas of expertise, and how do you use these strengths to overcome the major challenges of the business? I think you've sort of discussed that partially, but do you want to elaborate on that any further?
yeah, there's a there's the fourth book coming out that's called the 3x3 Matrix, and it's a guide to kind of growing a business. And the concept is there's three components to a business. And it doesn't matter if it's a restaurant or an accounting firm or a software company or a car repair shop. You need to have a product and service. You need to have competent people and management, and you need to have adequate money. And with those three things, if you have two of them, you can normally get the third. So if you have a great product and great people, you can usually raise the money. If you have a lot of money and a great product, you can hire the people, etc. But to be successful, three things have to happen. And that's kind of the answer to your question. Somewhere along the line, sales and marketing has to bring you a customer. Operations needs to produce the product and give it to the customer. And then finance and administration needs to keep the company organized, taxes, HR, IT, all that type of stuff. So when I look at myself, and many people are good at one of those three things, sales and marketing, operations, finance and administration. I had a great mentor early on in my career. His name was Mike Hayes, partner at Coopers and Lybrand. And he told me that, and I was a young guy, I was 25, 26 maybe. And he told me, if you're going to be successful, you have to be a trusted advisor, or you could be an accountant. And I said, Mike, what's the difference? And he said, well, if you're an accountant, when somebody has an accounting or a tax question, they're going to phone you. And when you're a trusted advisor, your most important client is going to phone you, and he's going to say, my kid's in drug rehab, or I'm getting a divorce, or something terrible happened, I need help. And it's not about accounting and stuff like that. It's really about this overall business advice. And Mike explained to me that if I was going to be a trusted advisor, I needed to understand sales and marketing, operations and production, and finance and administration. And he said, most people can do one of them really well. Some people can do two of them really well. There's about 1% of the people on a scale of 1 to 10 that can do those three things, 9 and 10. And if you want to be successful, learn to do all three.
Right.
So I have always been a big business getter. I have always been lucky in developing new business, new clients, expanding services. I think I'm really, really good at doing the work. I do less of the work now, but I think I'm really good. And I spend most of my time working with companies on succession planning and family succession and things like that.
Sure.
And then you have to understand finance and administration. And understanding the accounting, the legal, the negotiating leases, HR issues. And, some people think I'm an walking HR disaster because I sometimes don't say exactly the right thing, but, and that's probably true, but at least I know a lot about HR. And I think that having those three areas of expertise really helps you.
Yes.
The advice to somebody is if you're not good at one of those, make damn well sure that you compensate by getting somebody on your team directly or indirectly that can help you with the ones that you're not good in.
Yes.
Because you need to do all three of those to make the business work.
Yeah.
And the challenges to overcome, you have to kind of design things to make sure you have a good sales pipeline. You got to get the work done, and you got to count the beans, right? If you do all three of those, it's probably okay.
Yeah. No, you've certainly done a good job in accomplishing those three things. And you said you got to be lucky, but as I think we both know, you got to work hard to be lucky. Uh,
Yeah.
that is for sure. And it's very admirable that you've been able to, do what you've accomplished. So the hospitality industry in California, as we're all aware, is going through some, extremely challenging economic challenges, with the shortage of labor, the high operating costs of, employees, products, insurance, occupancy costs, everything down the line. And, with the operator trying to maintain price value so he can keep his customer count, from getting eroded by just trying to pass through all these increased costs. How do you see this situation and the industry today and tomorrow, and the minimum wage just going up to $20, which is obviously going to be the bar for everybody, because if you want to get good people, you got to be competitive, even if you don't have 60 plus units and part of a chain. So what's your perspective on this, all these operating challenges that the restaurant industry is facing, particularly in California?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest hurdles in California is we have something, or we don't have something called the tip credit.
Right.
So what ends up happening, you're pretty familiar with this, and
Yes.
anybody that has a restaurant is familiar with it. But what ends up happening is the guys in the front of the house are getting the $20 plus they're getting tips, and the guys in the back of the house, there's not enough money to pay them much more than 20 or $25, and they're not getting tips. And the guys in the front of the house who are getting the tips aren't necessarily cooking the meal or doing everything, and so it's totally unfair. Other states have tip credit where you take some of the tip money and it's kind of offset against the minimum wage. And the guys in the front of the house still make a lot of money, but they're not making a fortune. They're not making more than the owners. So that's and that's just a California thing. And if you're in the business, all you can do is shake your head and say, why is it this way? So then some restaurants have decided what we're going to do is we're going to share tips. And the next thing you know, you're hit with a lawsuit. There's all these low-life attorney firms out there that end up doing these class action lawsuits, and they're terrible. And they rile up the employees, and the employees, they don't really know the difference, and they think the restaurant's making a ton of money, and you end up where it was a good idea to share the tips. And even if the people want to, if one person says, I don't want to do it, they can disrupt the entire thing. And so this whole thing about tipping and minimum wage is really, really hard. The new minimum wage where on the fast food, I mean, what we're going to basically be doing is you're going to have less people working. You're going to have more androids. You go into a lot of fast food places, and you're pushing the button on the screen to order,
Right.
and it's because they can't afford to have the person. So where you have the government thinks they're doing the employee a favor, they're not, because what the restaurant needs to do is to have less hours on the payroll, and so they have to cut things. The occupancy costs, the cost of permits and getting stuff done. We had a situation in San Jose where San Jose did a fantastic job. They have something that's kind of one-stop shop, and you bring all your permits in, and they have the electrical guy, the plumbing guy, the heating guy, this guy. They're all there. Fire department's there, and they walk through your plans, all of them at the same time, and they tell you what you need to fix, and then you fix it, and you can actually get a permit almost in a day.
Wow.
That cannot happen in San Francisco. It's crazy. It's just unbelievable. And then they have other things that kill you. At the cafe, we had a whole bunch of outside seating. And then one day they came up and said, "This the city said, well, you don't have the right permit for this." We said, "Well, we've been doing it's been 15 years." "Well, it doesn't matter. It's not that you got to close all this down. You got to close it. You can't have tables this big. You have to do this, you have to do that." And by the time we got it opened again, it was 6 months. And, you know, and so you have these different things. And I don't think government understands that you're killing the business with all your rules and regulations. And as a result, it gets harder and harder and harder to make money. And very few really are making money, and hardly anybody is making any big money. And so you wonder, why does anybody go into this business in the first place? And I think it has some cachet, and you think you can do better than the other guy. The shortage of employees down at Scott's in San Jose, Sammy, the general manager, he was phoning me every day, and he said another two guys quit to go do construction work.
Sure.
They get $40 an hour, and I'm paying them 20.
Right.
And he says, we just don't have it. There's just nobody to work.
Yeah.
And so you have all these issues, and I think that the hospitality industry somehow needs to come together with the government and sit down. And it's not going to happen, but sit down in a room and say, here's what we need to do to survive. And rather than the government trying to figure out how they're going to help all the employees, they should figure out half the time how they're going to help the restaurants survive. And then I think that would work.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Good luck.
Good luck is right. Very good luck. Just like the next question I'm going to talk to you about, but we're both fellow, native San Franciscans, which is a rarity. And, we've both been involved in San Francisco business for many years, and seeing all the challenges of doing business in San Francisco today. I mean, what are your thoughts regarding when do you think the city will rebound and regain its reputation, as a popular place to do business, for tourists and for the convention center to get reactivated, et cetera. I mean, it's a beautiful city, it's got so much to offer, it's close proximity to, so many nice places to visit in the northern part of the state and the southern part of the state. But yet, it's plagued with all this bad reputation, because of the homelessness and the drugs and, everything else out of control. What's your thoughts on that? When do you think San Francisco will rebound to the fabulous city it's been known throughout the world for so many years? When do you think this city will come back?
Well, San Francisco is a place you cannot kill. So it sounds terrible if I say it's like a cockroach. It's going to come back. And nobody wants cockroaches, but San Francisco will survive. It's beautiful. The weather is great. surrounded by lots and lots and lots and lots of money and arts and athletics and all of that type of stuff. So it will survive. The question really is, how long is it going to take to rebound? And unless the government gets serious about doing something to fix some of these things, it's going to take a longer and longer time. It's just that. And another thing is that there's a time bomb going on with the governmental salaries and pensions and benefits that just keep going up and up and up and up, and the tax base isn't going to go up. Right now I'm on a committee with the Chamber of Commerce and other business organizations, and we're sort of negotiating changes in the business tax. And the city wants to make the changes neutral. So right now they collect about 500 million in business taxes, and they want to move it around a little bit, but still make it 500 million. And the business community is telling them, you got to make it 300. You got to make a serious cut to let people do something. And I don't think that that's going to happen. So who knows who's going to happen in the mayor's race, and whether or not the mayor can really make a difference. But I think that at the end of the day, you got to limit some of the regulations, and you got to market San Francisco where people feel excited. If Macy's can hang on another couple of years, maybe that's a good thing. But the fact that Union Square is half empty is terrible. When I was a kid, when you were a kid, your parents took you downtown, right, to
The real
shop.
treat. Real treat to go down.
Emporium, Macy's, I Magnums, all this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. During the holidays, it was a real treat to go downtown. But now it's very sad, really sad. Well, anyway, hopefully, the things you said about San Francisco, it's natural, characteristics of good quality of, temperature and accessibility to, nice places to go. I think it will come back. It's just a matter of time, and hopefully the time will be soon, for sure. Steve, I want to acknowledge you for the leadership contributions you have made to the accounting and hospitality industries, and to all the nonprofit organizations you've been involved in throughout your life. For over 4 decades, you have spent your time, energy, and passion into more than 20 nonprofit boards, including the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce, the Bay Area Council, Reardon High School, your alma mater, and the Five Buckets Foundation, to name a few. Your life serves as a role model, as a devoted husband, a father, a successful business person, and a committed human being to improving this world. With your service to many nonprofit boards you have diligently served on. So I want to thank you very much for joining us today. If anybody in our audience wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way to do that?
In touch with me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. My email is very, very simple. It's my SD, my Stephen David Mayer.
And your middle name is David? My middle name is David.
Oh, really?
Wow. That's unique.
Separated at birth.
Wow. That's something.
So it's at sdmayer at sdmayer, very symmetrical.com. That's my email. You can phone my office. My assistant's name is Jamie Bell. I'm sure she'll be happy to take a call. Our office number is 415-691-4040. That's the front office. Reach out, and I'm always happy to talk to anybody. I'm, consider myself incredibly lucky for, you have all this stuff I do and everything else, but you can't do it without a great family and great customers and great employees and a lot of luck. It takes a lot of luck, but sometimes you make your own luck.
Yes, you work very hard to make your luck. That's for sure. Well, thank you, Steve. If you have any questions from this presentation, please email them to me at steve@restaurantrealty.com, and I'll respond to you shortly after the show. Just something about our future Dealmaker shows. We have in May, Heidi Kraling, who's the chef owner of the famous award-winning Insalata Mediterranean restaurant in San Anselmo. And she's been in business for nearly 30 years, and she's very involved, like Steve, in many nonprofit boards. Um, Donna Solomon in June, she will be our Dealmaker co-host. She's the owner of Cucina in San Anselmo, one of the top Italian restaurants in Marin. And I sold her the restaurant over 20 years ago. In July, we will have Ike Shahada, the founder of Ike's Sandwiches, with almost 100 locations in California, Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, Texas, and Utah. And in August, Vivian Borges, the former managing partner of Paris Bakery in Monterey and their wholesale operation in Seaside, which we recently sold. And we're in the process of lining up some other very important, successful co-hosts. I want to thank you all for joining us today. If you want to get in touch with me, it's Steve at restaurantrealty.com. And most important, take care of yourself, take care of others, and stay well. And Steve, again, thank you very much for
Sure.
the excellent presentation you made today, and just talking about really some very down-to-earth grassroots principles which make people better human beings. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
Okay, you take care of yourself, everyone. Okay, take care. Bye. Thank you, Steve.